what I learned that day is the test is testing one thing. It is testing how well that child tests.
So the question is something that I don't think we've ever really talked about too much. And so it's a good one to address. It's what about testing? That's a question that I know lots of moms ask. And I think it really depends on where you live in the country, because that determines whether or not testing your kids. And when I say testing, there are different kinds of testing. There's the spelling test that you can do every Friday or Monday or whatever. And then you've got your standardized state testing. And so depending on where you live, your state may require your kids to be tested every year, or maybe even a couple times a year. If you live in a free state, like I do, and like Abby does, testing is not required where we live. But I know a lot of parents still choose to do so. So Abby, what do you do with your kids when it comes to testing?
Well, we have optional testing where I live, but we really, we kind of advocate for testing because our state organization takes our test scores, not individually, but all together, like nobody's names are on them. And then those go to our leadership in our state, our legislation, or our legislators, and then they can see based on homeschool test scores. I mean, that's kind of the voice that says, see, we don't need government intervention. Look how well we're doing. And they say it year after year. They say, based on your test scores, clearly you're doing a fine job.
Wow.
Because on average, across the whole nation, I mean, this is universal. Homeschoolers test much, much higher than public school students. So there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to testing. But so I have given my kids, we kind of do it third grade and up. And I really do it based on my student. I learned this year, and this is kind of what I wanted to encourage parents with, because as I'm listening to moms around me take these test scores as though they are the voice of God and they are everything that their homeschool hinges on, that's kind of what I just wanted to hit on is test scores test one thing. You know, they say it tests math and language and this and that, but really here's what test scores primarily test. They test how well your kids test.
Right.
I have three kids, but two of them tested this year, and they were on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And I want to give you this funny visual of my testing morning. My child A had pencils in a row, sharpened, paper stacked nicely, bedroom clean, breakfast eaten, dressed, the whole bit, ready for test day. Child B, and just the gifts of that child are administrative, organization. Like that child is unbelievably gifted. And I see her gifts across the board. And I see how, and just even in our family ministry, she is like, we couldn't do it without her. She is so incredibly gifted. Child B, I walk into child B's room and I can't even see the carpet. And I feel like breakfast is like strewn across in pajamas, one sock on, one sock off, can't find a pencil anywhere, doesn't really care. And again, this child is unbelievably gifted in other areas. So as we're going into test day, I'm cracking up. Well, lo and behold, the test starts and one child freezes. And I know as I'm watching that child knows every answer on the test. Child B gets a 99.9 percentile across the board on everything. And what I learned that day is the test is testing one thing. It is testing how well that child tests.
Right.
Because I, as a mom, I know that my God created each of my children unique and individually and already has a purpose for them. And I saw that day that when I got the test scores back, I didn't even open them. I mean, I did later, but I was like, it doesn't matter because I already know where my child is gifted and where my child is going and how well they're doing. That doesn't mean that we just ignore test scores and say it doesn't matter if they knew what 2 + 2 is. But I just want to encourage parents to say a piece of paper doesn't tell you who your child is. It will never affect God's plan for your child. It just won't. It's not like God has this plan and went, oh, they have test anxiety. That didn't work well. Well, I guess my plan now for this child is no longer. And I think that's my encouragement is it is important to teach our kids how to overcome test anxiety. It is important to teach them how to take a test. I will never forget the first year I administered the test to our co-op. 90% of the kids didn't know how to fill in a bubble.
Right.
And they all would have done very well, but they literally, so it is important that we teach our kids, just skills and how to time themselves well and all of that. But as a mom, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking to the moms that says, don't let a piece of paper, don't let a state agency, don't let your neighbor or your parents or anyone else tell you how your child is doing, because you know your child's gifts and talents. You know that every kid flourishes in some area. And I think we learn that a lot as we do our ministry with kids with disabilities. Quite honestly, those kids have more abilities in areas than I ever will. And so let's focus on what our kids do well and not let pen and pencil and paper and test scores tell us otherwise.
Right. Right. And not just tell us who we think our kids are, but who we are as their teacher and as their mom. Because oftentimes, as moms, if our kids test, I've only ever tested my kids one time. And as moms, we can look at the test and go, oh man, we're really blowing it. We're really messing up this whole homeschool thing.
Right.
And who cares? Because again,
that's one area.
It doesn't test
how they treat other people. It doesn't test how they function in our home. It doesn't
test their character. It doesn't test their relationship with Jesus. And like you said, I mean, they could be an incredible student, have, incredibly, be really advanced in one area and test terribly in that area.
Yeah. Just because they don't test well.
Right.
So, I don't do well under pressure. So I think, and not that we're saying, because I also think that tests are helpful, because there was an area I was like, oh, we have never even looked at that. That's an area I didn't, I was like, oh yeah, biology, forgot about that one. So I think tests are helpful. We're not bashing tests. We're just saying a test is a test. That's all it is. We aren't going to look at our entire child's value and who they are based on what age, what year, month, and date they were potty trained. That's one area. So just keep it in its place. Any tests you take, end of chapter review tests, keep it in its place. If your kid can regurgitate the entire chapter and go out and put it into action in the real world and they fail the test, guess what? Who cares? They've clearly shown that they know that and that they've mastered that. So all we're saying is, tests have a place, but it's only one place. It is one thing and one place. So just keep that into perspective, moms, because I have seen it derail way too many moms.
Yep. It's all about perspective. It's having the right perspective. What is the purpose of the test? If you're doing the test because you want to prove to yourself that you're doing a great job teaching, maybe ease off on that just a little bit, because that's not going to give you an accurate picture of how you're teaching. If it's because you want to know exactly where your kid is academically, it might tell you some. It will tell you some, but it's okay. And like you said, it might tell you where your strengths are, where their weaknesses are, where you need to focus. It's a guide, and the spectrum is so wide. And just keep focused on your why, which we talk about all the time. Why are you even homeschooling in the first place? But don't let that test become an idol to you as a homeschool mom. If your state requires it and you have to test, and it's something that you don't really care about, maybe do the test and then don't even look at it. I think that'd be kind of hard to maybe not look at it ever. But and
we still want to do well, because everything that we're called to do, we want to do well. You know what I mean? We are representing the homeschool community. We test well, and that is what helps our freedom. So we're not saying by any means. I mean, we never throw out academics. We on Schoolhouse Rocked always say, God comes first. Discipling our children comes first. Academics will then come. They will, because God has a plan for our kids. We take seriously our job of educating our kid. We just want you to keep things in the right perspective, in the right order. So do well on tests, because we're representing the homeschool
your best
community.
On tests.
Yes, do your best. And every kid, I was glad I wasn't taking those tests. Half those questions, I'm like, I do not know the answer to that. And yet God still has a plan for my life.
Right. Amen. So I'm one that if I'm not required to give my kids tests, I don't. I just don't do it. We test in other ways, Right. But I'm with my kids, so I know what they know and I know what they don't know. And so I don't feel like I need a piece of paper to tell me their strengths and weaknesses. I'm with them all day, every day. I already know the answers to those questions.
Totally. So, I would say though, if you have a student that will need to take tests later, like perhaps they're going to college, which we're not promoting, a solid, godly, biblical-based college, and they will need to take tests. I mean, it is important that they don't all of a sudden not know how to use the mouse to click on the button, or even just skills on if there's 4 answers that sound right, which is the most right. I mean, those are great skills. They're just problem solving skills.
Right.
But again, it's one thing, moms. Do not put too much weight into any one thing. The only thing that you can put all your weight into is if you're discipling your kids in the Lord. That's it.
That's right. That's right. Amen. Okay. Well, we're going to tie up this episode. We will be back on Wednesday. We've got a few more questions to answer. We will see you back then. Again, if you have not yet subscribed to the newsletter, go to schoolhouserocked.com. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can find out if and when Abby and I are going to do our meetup at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky in September. Sometime it's the like last week in September, but we'll try to figure out a date. We'll look at the schedule and see if we can make that happen. But be signed up for the newsletter. And then also, we would love it if you would give, just pray about a donation to Schoolhouse Rocked. We have a lot of money to raise for the movie, but this ministry also, it costs money to do ministry. And so if the Lord puts that on your heart, we would appreciate that. Go to schoolhouserocked.com also for that and click on the donate here button. And we are so grateful for those of you who have stepped up and prayed for us and have given financially. I mean, it truly overwhelms us whenever we get a donation, whether it's $10 or $1,000 or $5,000. I mean, it always just blesses us beyond belief. So thank you for those of you who have sacrificed that for us.